My great-grandfather bought into it. He bought into the American dream. And so I'm sure that that day on December the 28th of 1915, he was saying to himself, yes, yes, my little piece of the American dream, I'm here. I'm holding on to it. My great-grandfather emigrated to the United States, and he helped oilcloth companies convert to making a felt-based floor covering product. One of the plants that he converted was here in Salem, New Jersey. The company was owned by a judge and a retailer, and the retailer really wanted my great-grandfather to burn the buildings and offered to split some of the fire insurance proceeds. They arrested the retailer, and then a sensational trial took place in the courthouse in Salem, where the retailer was prosecuted, and my great-grandfather was the key witness for the prosecution. About a year later, the judge contacted my great-grandfather and said, I want you to come back, I want you to own the company, I want you to buy it. That was the start of the John B. Campbell Manufacturing Company. That plant that he converted, he sold it. And he built a brand new plant, and this time he had his two sons. My great-uncle Neil, the elder, and my grandfather, Kenneth. That plant stayed in operation until 1924. There was a fire, and it burned the plant to the ground. When they rebuilt the plant, they moved the location about a half a mile down the railroad track to Mannington Township. In 1931, we had another fire, and the plant burned to the ground. Dad, he said he just cried because it was catastrophic. But the question was, could they rebuild during a depression and keep the company going? My great-uncle and my grandfather took second and third mortgages out on their own homes, and they decided to rebuild. They brought in contractors, and they said, we want you to hire our workers, which during the Depression was extremely important.
Kenneth, he was very careful to keep people employed, even though the company was in a deep recession.
Our workers, they rebuilt the plant. The real revolution for the company happened in the mid-30s, 1936, what we called the KISS process. What they discovered is the fact that they could take another piece of floor covering, flip it upside down, and at the end of that printing process, match them together, pull them apart, and had 2 for 1. And so they automatically overnight doubled the capacity of the plant, and it was with that that the company really had solid economic underpinnings, and we were able to move forward. Let's talk about my father a little bit. Dad grew up right next door to the plant. There were no suitable hotel rooms in Salem, and so when a customer came in, they were always put up in the family's house. One of the things that transformed my father's life was, number one, getting married.
I was a school teacher's daughter, and I got the best scholarship at Wellesley. So off I went to Wellesley, where my elder sister had been. When a friend said that she had a friend at Dartmouth who was hoping to gather together a few compatible people to go over to Dartmouth for a party. Sounded good to me. And so Johnny Campbell was the driver of this station wagon that came to pick us up. I did eventually date Johnny. He was working on the end of his sophomore year, and the Marine Corps beckoned. Johnny came up to visit a couple of times from Quantico, and in the winter, we were married.
Dad was in combat in the Pacific Rim. And when my father came back, at my grandfather's strong urging, he went directly into working for the company. My Uncle Neil, my grandfather's older brother, who was the manufacturing guru, was ill. And then in 1950, my uncle died, and my father was engaged in manufacturing. He was not an engineer. He couldn't screw in a light bulb without help.
Johnny was so personable. He treated every employee the same way. And he knew everyone's name, and he went through the plant daily. We interacted a lot with people who worked at the plant. I mean, they were our friends.
Johnny was very dynamic and very outgoing.
He was a character that was bigger than life.
He was very decisive about the business. He was passionate about the business.
His instincts for the business were unrivaled.
Dad, he realized that the post-World War II world was changing and changing rapidly. And Mannington, we were stuck in the products of the post-World War I era. And he realized either you innovate or you die. My father put all bets on the table in coming up with a 12-foot wide rotogravure printing process.
Johnny was very instrumental in persuading his family that they needed to invest in rotogravure machines.
It was $1 million investment in 1957.
The greatest gamble that was under my father's watch.
And my father worked around the clock. My mother brought us over to the plant to visit him. That's how hard he worked.
It really transformed Mannington because it took us from being a legitimate player in the felt-based low-end business to suddenly being a recognized leader almost overnight in the resilient category. So my father went to Armstrong and he convinced them that they missed out. They agreed to allow Mannington to manufacture a 12-foot wide rotogravure vinyl flooring for them. The interesting thing is they put a point man to oversee the operation between Mannington and Armstrong. That gentleman became the first outside of the family CEO, Art Williams. Might have been done over a couple drinks. Art drank Canadian Club with a touch of vermouth, just a touch of. I learned how to pour drinks when I was 10.
I'm Johnny Campbell.
And Art Williams.
Welcoming you to Rose Hall Intercontinental Hotel outside of Montego Bay. Just telling you how happy we are that so many of you made this trip. You shot the hell out of our budget, but it's worth it.
We did not have outside management until the late 60s. It was primarily family run till that point.
That was a gigantic, bold step to make that decision.
My sisters and I, in growing up in the Campbell household with my grandparents right next door, practically our next door neighbor was the Salem manufacturing site. We might take a walk through the factory with my dad. He was not shy about bringing my sisters and I into the plant, regardless of our age.
We were allowed to run up through the catwalks. No safety helmets in those days, you know.
They loved coming into the plant. It was a vacation for them.
We were not allowed to mess up anybody's desk, but we could leave treats and notes, and so we did that almost every Saturday.
It was like growing up with another big member of the family right next door.
Keith was born with interest in the business.
I started at age 17 painting things. At age 18, when I did start in the plant, I was put in the maintenance department, and I was the guy that carried the tools. That was my huge responsibility. By the time I graduated from college, I worked my way through all of the production departments, and I loved every second of it. I have to admit that I never really came into my mind as to whether I should be a preacher, a teacher, or whatever. I just felt that working at Mannington was going to be a wonderful thing.
Johnny loved Mannington, and he seems to have passed that love of Mannington on to several generations.
We're family-held business, 5th generation. Less than 1% of all family-held businesses make it to the 5th generation. It's truly exceptional.
I mean, my grandfather was my hero. He was a hero of mine. Mainly as my grandfather, before I knew him as chairman of the board of Mannington or as an industry leader. He was just a leader of our family. But one thing I learned early on about my grandfather was how proud he was of Mannington. And everybody he ever introduced me to that worked at Mannington, you could see it in his face, how proud he was of this company.
And I got to tell you, Keith is the acorn that did not drop far from the tree. I mean, he is very much in his dad's mold. Both of them, their heart and soul is this company.
Every time I'm out in the plant, every time I'm with our Mannington associates, it just puts a big smile on my face because we have fabulous, dedicated people. And they're good at what they do. They're good at what they do. Probably the most challenging decade for styling and design at Mannington had to have been the 1970s. There's not a lot you can do with avocado and gold.
You know, he'd show me things and I'd say, well, that's good, but I don't think that one would fly. There were some really, really ugly things.
I tell you one thing, I sold a lot of that junk too.
Welcome to this special edition of The Tonight Show. And now, here's Johnny.
Thank you, Ed. I'd like to extend a warm welcome to a returning sponsor on The Tonight Show, somebody that you know very well.
I know them quite well.
Mannington Mills.
There are plenty of colors and styles. Pick your favorite, take it home, and install it. It's easy.
Mannington Never Wax has a built-in shine that never needs strippers or polishes to stay... Oh, you dirty son of...
Mannington No Wax Floors. Mannington keeps on looking like new. Mannington, our floors are easy on you. Mannington.
History is about good events, and it's also about bad events.
Mannington has invented a floor that breaks the shine barrier. Through all kinds of torture, Mannington Gold shines brighter and longer than even Armstrong's best floors. Mannington Gold, a shining example of what a floor should be.
We had a sheet vinyl product called Mannington Gold and spent an enormous amount of money to launch it.
Did not do significant test floors to make sure the product was correct and ready to go to market.
Sigrid Joel is sold. She selected a Mannington Gold floor for her Lancaster kitchen.
Very nice. I like it.
If Joel decides she doesn't like this floor, Mannington will replace it.
The marketing group came up with the idea that we will replace the product for any reason.
And it failed. The largest product failure in the history of the flooring industry. It was going to cost a tremendous amount of money to not only fix the process, but we had streams of complaints coming in.
There were times that we put down 2, 3, 4 different floors on the same product.
This was a truly threatening product. I mean, we had potential claims against us of about 150 to 160 million.
And so we had to take a write-off. And that write-off of the value of the company was more than half of the net worth of the company. You know, the future of Mannington was certainly in question. Tony Kelly, our CEO, he said, I'm going to bring Johnny in here and we're going to explain what happened. He said, how do you think he's going to take it? I said, he's not going to take it well at all. Dad came in, Tony explained the situation to him, and after about 10 minutes, Dad said, you're not telling me anything I don't know. And he got up and he said, fix it. And he left the room.
And that was a deep, depressing time.
At Mannington, when we face difficulties, we lock arms and we get together and we go after whatever the problem may be. Under Tony Kelly's leadership, we did. And the rebound was something that probably should be written up and put in the Harvard Business Review.
If you lived through that time, you knew, and you still know today, that Mannington is a company of integrity and is a company that will, stand behind its promises, and that carries a tremendous amount of equity to this day.
Tony Kelly told me, he said, it's safe to say to your dad now that we've made it. I called him up on a Friday night. I drove down there. Dad poured us both a glass of wine. I said, Dad, I just want you to know, we made it. We made it all back. And, Dad had a tear in his eye, and he just said, God, I'm proud of you, proud of Tony, I'm proud of the team. I never doubted for a second that you guys couldn't do it. And I'm proud of you. My father died a day and a half later. But to this day, I'll remember telling him the news that we made it all back. And that was the best day. Dad left such an enormous footprint on the modern Mannington. I sat down with Tony Kelly, who was our CEO at the time, our Chief Operating Officer, Tom Davis. We turned around and we said, what did Johnny really teach us? What were the things that we don't want to miss? Let's just get a piece of paper out and I'll make my list and you make yours and Tom, you make yours and we'll compare notes. They were pretty identical. What makes us unique is the fact that we have a set of values, and these values have been around for generations now. Doing the right thing, caring, controlling our own destiny, and working hard and playing hard. And we live those values.
You see that in a lot of companies where they say one thing and do another. You don't see that here. You see Keith, he believes in those values, he's gonna live those values.
That's something I've learned from my uncle, Keith Campbell. He's saying first and foremost, our most important job as family members involved in the business is to remember and guard our culture.
Mannington was a competitor of mine for nearly 31 years. Great admiration for the company. I had been with the company about 4 months and was unexpectedly diagnosed with cancer. So I was new COO, new company, still in transition. But I remember going in to tell Tom Davis, but then I asked to tell Keith Campbell directly. And so it was kind of a low point. And I will never forget what Keith said. Keith said, we're very good at dealing with life here. That one comment that Keith Campbell made to me in his office calmed all my fears and gave me the true understanding of Mannington and its culture.
Family is important. And for the Campbell family, for Mannington Mills, their workers are a family, and they make sure they take care of them.
You know, with 100 years of making and manufacturing product, you can't be around for that long without pushing some innovations. One of the things that's been unique about Mannington and doesn't necessarily come across immediately as an innovation, but really sets us apart, is our breadth.
And really being an innovator in the way we took multiple categories to market. Mannington was really the leader in doing that, and something now that almost every major flooring company has emulated.
The creation of Mannington Commercial is a big milestone. As part of us coming out of Mannington Gold, we redefined the company.
There are more manufacturers who, in effect, are following what we've initiated, which is our choices strategy, which is offering multiple choices to our customers. We were the first to do that, and we're seeing a lot of other people get into flooring categories that previously hadn't been in.
You know, there were a lot of good days at Mannington, I must tell you. I would say the best day for me was Natureform technology.
It was a new type of texturing that we invented for sheet vinyl. And it really made a quantum leap forward in the realism of the product and how the product looked on the floor and what it felt like.
That day was so exciting because of the incredible enthusiasm that our customers had for that product.
The audible gasp in the audience and the applause is something that I'll never forget.
And it really took us out of sort of the downward spin we were in with gold and all we had to live through, and really created new positive momentum for the next several years.
We purchased Burke Industries in 2008.
Keith was on our doorstep a week after the acquisition, shaking hands with employees, letting them know who he was. And so to have that family of people, we thought you can do some good things together.
And our business has grown considerably in the commercial arena.
We were coming out of the recession of 2008, which absolutely devastated the housing industry, thus the flooring industry. Mannington had to be lean and mean, and here this opportunity came up to buy AMTICO.
There were a lot of sleepless nights trying to decide if it was the right thing for Mannington.
They had to take big risks to go buy AMTICO, but, you know, what a jewel.
Mannington's been quite good, you can see over the years, at getting into new sectors. Most recently with the acquisition of AMTICO into this developing product category, LVT, which is going to be a really big thing in the States, just as it has been in other geographic markets.
It was a bold step into the future for Mannington.
As Mannington looks forward, it is not my daddy's little vinyl company any longer. It's a big company with factory locations throughout the world, multiple sales locations, warehouses, etc. Mannington is learning how to be bigger.
I'm excited that we're now going to be 100 years old. At the same time, we're celebrating our anniversary, that we can say this is the largest Mannington's ever been. It's pretty unique.
And in fact, we're, as we speak, looking at what's the next thing we can do to differentiate ourselves from our competitors that are trying to follow our lead.
I can tell you in the next several years, we're going to continue to grow this company. We have to keep moving forward if we're going to stay relevant in this industry for another century.
You know, it's really unusual for a company to make it through 100 years and so many generations. And I think one of the reasons why they've been able to do that is that they have been able from generation to generation to pass on this tremendous family value set they have. And it starts with caring for people.
Our company's gone through recessions. We've had tough years. We've had great years. We've always made that a priority. Treating people the right way, being very fair during tough times, and that's something that I cherish and I'm proud of, that we can continue this legacy in a way that JBC is looking down and would be smiling about.